You are listening to the Aging Starts Now podcast, where it's all about responding with confidence to the legal, financial, and personal challenges created by a disability, unexpected illness, or aging in general. Join us weekly as elder law attorneys Barbara McGinnis and Chris Johnson, along with other members of the Johnson McGinnis Elder Care Law and Estate Planning team, talk about the tools, techniques, strategies, and services that will make the elder care journey easier for everyone involved. Get ready, because aging starts now.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Aging Starts Now. Today we're diving into one of the hardest conversations many families face, when parents are reluctant to move to an assisted living community. I'm Debra King, an elder care coordinator and licensed clinical social worker at Johnson McGinnis Elder Care Law and Estate Planning. It's a crossroads filled with emotion, fear, love, guilt, uncertainty. Maybe your mom says, "I'm fine right here." Maybe your dad insists, "I don't need help." And you're caught between wanting to respect their independence and knowing they might be safer and even happier with more support. In this episode, we'll explore why resistance to assisted living is so common, how to approach the conversation with empathy, and what steps can help families find common ground. Joining me for this conversation is fellow elder care coordinator, Pati Bedwell. Welcome, Pati.
Thank you, Debra.
Glad you're here. So let's talk about what are some of the most common reasons older adults resist the idea of moving to an independent or assisted living community.
Well, I think older adults are like all the rest of us. Nobody really wants to leave their home. So first and foremost, one of the main reasons why I think our older adults are resistive to that idea is they don't want to leave their home. So often convincing them to leave the home is really the first hurdle that you have to overcome. And a lot of elders, they're just fearful of the unknown. They're not sure what to expect, so they would rather stay where they know, where they're more familiar. They don't realize things could be better if they had a little bit more support.
Do you think some of them are afraid or don't understand what assisted living really is?
Oh, yeah. I think by and large, most older people, most of the older generation now, they didn't grow up with assisted livings in their lives. All they knew for people when they got old, the only place they went to was the nursing home, and it was a one-way trip kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of those feelings and some of those ideas are still prevalent in the minds of so many people when it's their turn, when it's them that are being asked or told that they need to leave their home because they need more care. And I think also that resistance to acknowledging that lack of independence, acknowledging that I need more help is very, very difficult for lots and lots of people, most people. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so going to an assisted living is kind of like acknowledging and admitting that you need help, that you're not as independent as you were.
Mm-hmm. Even if it's a spouse caring for their loved one and they're going to take care of them at home, and everyone but them recognize that it would be so much better for both of them if one or both moved to assisted living, there's still the idea of, I don't need that help. I'm fine. I can do it myself.
Right. And that's a hard thing to get over. I think part of human nature allows us to adapt to whatever our new circumstance is. So for some older people, as they start losing their abilities, they learn different ways to compensate.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't drive that far, or I put everything down on this shelf so I don't have to stand up or reach too low, and do things like that. Had a lady who would prefer to scoot on her backside on her floor from one room to another so she didn't fall. Things like that. I mean, people will do a lot of things to keep what they feel their independence is.
I think another piece of the puzzle is, especially for today's seniors, is they haven't moved around much. My mother-in-law lived in the same
Hmm.
house she moved into when she first married for 50 years. And the idea of moving to a congregate community, where what was the word she used? She shared walls. Moving into a situation, she's never lived in an apartment, and living in a community where other people are right next door is difficult for her. She values her privacy and her independence.
Right, right. We all do. We all do. And if you think about it, you've moved to a new house. You've moved to a new house since I've known you. Even that is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so imagine now you're an older person and your children are telling you not only do you have to move to a different place, you're giving up everything. You're giving up your house, your neighborhood, your community that you have right there that you've had for so long.
And my
So,
stuff.
yeah, and all my stuff. Yeah, I'm going from a 2,500 square foot home to 400 square feet,
Yeah.
and hopefully it's private feet, hopefully it's a private room. Most of them are in assisted living.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a lot to moving into an assisted living. A lot
So
of.
how can families overcome this?
I think one of the best things, I think they always need to be upfront and honest about what's going on, about why they feel mom or dad needs this type of setting, why they need to make this move. I think if they, for the best success, I think they need to have their elder involved in the decision making, meaning they should allow them to go and check out all of these assisted livings. That's where they're going to live. So is it really fair for them not to at least see it and
Mm-hmm.
have some input in it?
Mm-hmm.
If you can, maybe they can go for a week of respite. That's a really good way of getting someone to kind of dip their feet into the assisted living lifestyle. Because often I've had many people that were surprised when they got to an assisted living at how much they enjoyed it. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize how much they liked the socialness of an assisted living, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
or knowing that they didn't have to worry about emptying their trash every day or
Mm-hmm.
doing their laundry or when the next meal was going to be served and how it was going to get done and to them. Mostly the social aspect is what I find people are very surprised by once they move into an assisted living. And those are things that I think should be pointed out to your elder
I would
as.
take the conversation even earlier. As we age, when we hit those millstones, whether it's 65 or 70 or 80, but especially 85, 90, and 95, is having that conversation of when you get to the point of needing more care than I can provide, what do you want to do? Or would you, at what point would you consider assisted living? Because we can't afford 24/7 in home care. Having
Mhm.
that conversation, planting that seed that, it may be a possibility. If something happens to me as your child or your spouse, and you in a situation where you need care, may need to move into a facility that can provide that care. And
Yeah,
let's
and that comes back to what we've talked about many times before, and that's setting expectations, as you're starting to care for someone, and helping them to set expectations on what they can expect as their condition as they continue to age and possibly get frailer and things like that.
And we see it a lot in our practice because people come in thinking, oh, I'm just going to get old and I'm going to die and it's not going to be a problem. But we can tell you all the multitude of things that can happen that are not, it's not going to cause your death, but it may cause an increased need for care.
Right.
And how do we plan for that? What are your wishes if you are in that situation? Helping you understand and recognize that it could happen, and how can we honor your wishes? Just saying I'm going to stay home no matter what may not be a realistic plan. It's a
Right.
good hope, but it's not a plan.
Right. Right. So getting them to go into that assisted living for the first time is a big hurdle.
Yep.
And once you get over that, maybe it'll get a little bit easier. It kind of depends on the attitude that they take to it as well. That's why it's always best if you can get a little bit of a buy-in from your elder.
Mm-hmm.
At least the agreement to go and look at these places objectively.
Mm-hmm.
Have a meal, do this, talk to some of the people. Um, make it uh, as positive an experience for them as you can.
And I think
Um,
the communities try to do that.
mhm,
I've walked,
mhm.
how many communities have we walked into? And there's welcome, Mrs. Jones, and there's
Oh,
a
yeah.
sign on her door of welcome home, and the room is set up, or there's flowers or something. And they assign
Mhm,
them a buddy or a staff person to make sure that they get oriented and integrated into that community.
mhm. Yeah, it's they're wonderful communities. They can be very positive communities for some of our elders. Um, they do provide the services that they need a little bit of assistance. They
Mm-hmm.
do their laundry, their clean their rooms, all that sort of stuff. So with the right attitude, they can really, really, really enjoy and thrive. And so can the family.
Mm-hmm.
The family also needs to realize that their role is changing. They are not the hands on caregiver any longer. They can go back to being a little more of the child or the spouse, whatever their role actually is in that person's life. And then they're the overseer, they're the care manager. They're there to make sure that things go well, but they're not the ones providing that care. So it allows them the ability to be with their loved one and to spend more quality time with them.
But how does that family deal with it if their loved one digs their heels in and says, you're not going to do that to me? I mean, that's what we're talking about here is the
Yeah.
client who I always say you're balancing their safety on one hand with their happiness on the other. They're happy at home, but they're not safe. You don't like that. They would be safer in assisted living, but they
Hmm.
wouldn't be happy. They don't like that. And so how do we get through this, or what can a family member do, whether it's a spouse, more often it's a parent, or it may be both parents where one needs more care and the other won't let go.
Um, One thing I found that seems to be helpful is kind of turning the questions around or turning the situation around a little bit. Not so much, instead of saying, Mom, you really need this extra care, maybe what you say is, Mom, I don't think you understand how much I worry about you
Mm-hmm.
and how difficult it is for me to go home and worry that you're going to fall or worry about this. Will you please at least go and try this? Go and see what you think. That kind of thing. Sometimes that moves the needle a little bit because at the end of the day, mom and dad are still mom and dad, and they still want to look after their children. And they didn't, as a rule, they don't want their children to be unhappy or,
Mm-hmm.
expressing those things. So sometimes that helps.
And
Um,
sometimes, I'll have families have the plan in their back pocket as a backup plan
mhm,
because okay, they're not going to do it right now, but with the safety issue, something might happen, and then you're going to be forced to make a decision. So at least knowing what facilities are out there, which ones are in your financial area, which ones you can afford, which ones are close by, which ones you like, and having that ready if you should need it, should an emergency occur. If they go into rehab, that may be your opportunity to transition them to assisted living because they can't really go home. Do they really need to stay in a nursing home? If not, can we get them in assisted living? But have that in your back pocket, so you're ready when that opportunity arises, right?
Oh, yeah. I think, Deb, that's probably the best advice of all is just know what your options are, because you don't want to be looking at assisted livings, for the first time after your loved one is fallen and in the hospital and you've now realized they can't go back home.
Mm-hmm.
That's being stuck behind the eight ball and taking whatever comes available.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really not how you want to choose where your loved one is going to live.
Or how many times have we heard, well, the doctor says they need 24/7 care.
Yeah.
And that means either the family's got to step up and do that, or we're moving into assisted living.
Right. So always, doing the best that you can with your loved one by including them in the decisions, being honest and upfront with them about what's going on as they're aging, what the problems are that you're coming up against, that you can't, for whatever reason, at some point their care needs may be greater than what you're able to provide. And so getting them to sit down with you and come up with a plan for what happens then, is really a great idea.
And I like your idea of sharing your personal feelings of, I love you and I really wish I could do this more or longer, whether it's a spouse or a child. But I'm not able to do that and I need this kind of help.
Right.
Do it for me. Do it for me.
Right. I
Because you
think
love
framing
me.
it that way is a lot easier than framing it as, you need more help, you're this, and making it all on what the deficits are that the elder person has. I think coming from that perspective makes them naturally a little bit more defensive, or can.
Well, here's
So,
another thing families worry about, though, in those situations of mom or dad's in a home situation that's marginal at best. They're going over as they can, making sure there's food in the fridge or microwavable meals, or they're getting meals on wheels. Maybe they have the camera or the personal emergency response. But how many families are afraid that if something happens, it's going to reflect on them, that they're going to be charged with neglect or abuse?
oh yeah. Yeah, we hear that quite a bit. Well, if APS is called, I'll be in trouble. They're going to come and get me. Or yeah, people have that idea, and that's very far from the truth.
What is the truth of people are allowed
To make bad decisions, no
Yep.
matter how old you are. As
Yep.
long as you're over the age of 18, you can make your own decisions, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I've
And
talked
that's
to APS workers, adult protective workers for our listeners. I've talked to adult protective service workers. And even if they go out, and as long as the person has enough capacity to make decisions, meaning they don't have a diagnosis, they don't have a dementia that's impairing their choices, then all adult protective services is going to do in most cases is offer additional services. Let us send a homemaker in, let us send a personal caregiver in. We can help you with this, or offer them help with the move. But the person, unless they've been adjudicated, someone's taken them to court, then they're allowed to make a bad decision.
Yep. I'd like to say that all I make is good decisions, but we all know we all have our downfalls, don't we? Yeah. That's a very difficult one for families to accept.
Yeah. But again, you have that in your back pocket that should something bad happen, they have a hospitalization, they have a fall, that we have a plan of this is what we're going to do at that point in time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Having a plan helps you immensely.
And having a power of attorney, right?
Oh, of course. If you don't have that, you're really kind of very much at a loss, because you do have to have the authority to make decisions and to be able to sign paperwork and things like that.
And access the finances.
Yeah. So sounds like they need to come and see us, doesn't it, Deb?
I agree. A life care plan where they get the legal, the financial, and the care coordination all wrapped up in one package. That's what Johnson McGinnis Elder Care Law and Estate Planning has been doing for years and would like to do for anyone out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I hope any of our listeners listening out there to us today, if you have questions about our services, we would love to talk with you and just help you through whatever aging journey it is that you're going through.
Because we may not have all the answers, but we certainly know what the resources are. So.
That's true. That's true.
Well, Patty, thank you. I think this has been a good discussion. I want to thank our listeners because that's all the time we have for today's episode. If there's one thing to take away, it's the resistance doesn't mean refusal. It often means fear, love, or uncertainty. Change is hard at any age, and these conversations take time, patience, and heart. If you found today's conversation helpful, please share this episode with a friend or family member who might be facing the same challenge. Johnson McGinnis Elder Care Law and Estate Planning is a life care planning law firm, helping families navigate the financial challenges and care questions that come with aging. Join us next week for another episode of Aging Starts Now.
Thank you for listening to the Aging Starts Now podcast. For more information about today's show, visit tn-elderlaw.com, click on the Free Resources tab, and then click on Aging Starts Now. You'll find the show notes there. And while you're at it, why not check out all the free resources available at tn-elderlaw.com. Document downloads, the Johnson McGinnis blog, educational videos, informative articles, helpful links, a TV show, and more. It's all there, free for the taking. If you enjoy listening to the Aging Starts Now podcast, please subscribe, rate the show, or leave us a review. It's easy to do on whatever app you use to listen. We would love your feedback on the show. Aging Starts Now. We'll be back next week with more candid discussions about the challenges created by aging, disability, and unexpected illness.